Hi, and welcome back. Our guest today is Danielle Campisi, the owner of Danswell, a holistic education company located in Tarrytown, New York. Thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Jazz. I really am excited to be here and really believe in what you're doing, so thank you.
Thank you. We're glad to have you today. So tell us about your company, Danswell.
Well, Danswell is, the mission of Danswell is really to build self-healing communities and spread a message of our ability to self-heal, you know, from health to wealth. So focusing on financial nutrition, physical nutrition, mental, spiritual, and emotional nutrition, all of it holistically. We're at a time and place on the planet where it's just time to nourish on every level.
Now, expand upon what is self-healing exactly.
I believe that we have the power to heal ourselves. You know, I think oftentimes we look outside of ourselves to a doctor, to a friend, to a relative, to a new training module, or whatever the case might be for the answers. We have the answers in ourselves. And when we're given the right tools, we can actually heal ourselves.
You know, some people misunderstand the whole concept of healing. A lot of people think that healing is just instantaneous, you know, and I think that healing is a spectrum. Some people go to churches expecting, you know, just one prayer just to solve everything. And I think sometimes we try to look to prayer to stop the suffering. But I think that there's a lot of meaning in suffering as well. But we definitely want the suffering to end. And wouldn't you say that there's a whole spectrum to healing? Like from our foods to our thoughts to forgiveness, those kinds of things?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do think it can boil down to some very basic things, though. Sometimes we think it's going to be a complicated process. And certainly when you think about all that has been created and how we've been created, the beauty of that and its complication is amazing. But what it comes down to is what we put in and on our body, and what we tell ourselves, our thoughts, are really what dictate our health. You know, our environment is a part of that, and we're making choices about what environments to put ourselves in, what foods to eat, what lotions to use on our body. But mostly 10 times more than what we put in and on our body, it's our thoughts. Our cells hear absolutely everything, and they will listen to whatever you tell them. So if you're walking around all the time criticizing yourself, and you're doing that for decades, it's no wonder that you start to have arthritis, for example, over the years, because that's what causes arthritis, is critical thoughts of yourself and others. We know that now. Scientifically proven. I myself have had health challenges, and I'll tell you, as I've measured my own pH to monitor my own healing, when I wake up in the morning and I measure my pH and it's way below 7.0 at the acidic level, the yellow color, and after I lay back down and meditate with positive thoughts for 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is. And if I go and measure my pH again, now it's 8.0 in the dark blue, and it is amazing how your thoughts can change things like that. So just like stress on the body, right? When we get stressed, we feel that in the body. And it's the same thing that's happening with our thoughts, right? On every level. And so it's really a great exercise to look at your thoughts, look at the kind of patterns that existed in your family and what may be the thoughts, the fears, the guilt, the anger, the shame, the resentment, the criticism that might have been a pattern in your family, and start to try and receive that message, because that's what it is. The pain is a message. The suffering, just as you said, Jazz, is useful. It's a message. And when we receive the message and acknowledge it, and begin to take action to correct it, have the intention and the willingness to let go of the need for that pain, and then in its place put something positive, magic can happen. And that spontaneous healing can take place very fast in some
Thank
cases.
goodness.
And in some cases, it takes more time to break a pattern or a habit.
I definitely agree with you. I think that our thoughts absolutely create the world around us, the world as we see it. And definitely, if you have unforgiveness in your life, it can manifest into illnesses. It's not that we want illness, but our thoughts do create our health. And I definitely believe that. Now, your company, Danswell, is a startup. However, Danswell is doing big things. You had a huge healthcare expo in January. You had workshops, co-sponsors, speakers. Tell us about that event.
So that is something I had dreamed about doing for a long time. We had a larger scale event in January. I'd done other events with the AARP as a sponsor, as our title sponsor. And we also had the Kensington Assisted Living in White Plains for this one. And we had two home care companies, Premier Home Healthcare and Lean On We, also as sponsors for the event. We had Raw Revolution, which is a clean nut bar or protein bar that you can have there. Stone Street Coffee, which is a fair trade organic coffee house out of Brooklyn. The goal of what I'm doing with Danswell, the mission is really to tie together our health, our daily habits, our health, the health of the planet, and sustainable investing. And we do that in a way that saves you money, that's fun, and as well as driving a better planet, really, at the same time. If we just take a step back to the conversation we were just having around the thoughts, where we are on the planet, the collective consciousness right now is driving that. Our thoughts are driving that. And our actions, our daily habits are driving that. So we just had this incredible hurricane come through, Hurricane Florence, right? Yes. And we all know that these weather events are happening in rapid frequency at this point all over the planet. In fact, last year, Bloomberg research on the Universal Ecological Fund was quoted by Schroders, which is a huge asset management firm, manages like $543 billion in assets. And the research said that in just 10 years, just one decade, we would reach $1 billion a day in healthcare costs.
Wow.
As it relates to these weather events. I mean, what does that even look like to live in a world where we're reaching $1 billion a day in healthcare costs? What drove me to create this business wasn't that statistic. I came to know that statistic through doing this work. What drove me is that I'm indirect caregiver for 5 family members.
Wow.
And I've had health challenges over the last decade. And I am just part of the alarm system that is out there right now because everything is connected. And so when we choose, for example, to buy non-organic bacon or bacon that's industrially farmed, and all of those pig sludge reserves are located within the storm front of Hurricane Florence, for example, toxifying those neighborhoods, and it seems so far away from us. But our daily habit of purchasing that industrial bacon is having a direct effect. And the chemicals are going into the water supply, they're causing diabetes, they're causing Alzheimer's. When a storm then rolls through and whips up all of that, I hesitate to use the word, use any profanity on public television, but when the stuff hits the fan, right?
That's the word.
It continues the contamination. So we know we're in a global epidemic at this point, especially in the first world. In other parts of the developing world, there might be poverty and no food, but we have more than enough food and resources for the whole world to be fed at this point and to be conflict-free from suffering. And so I think it's our habits that are putting it out there and that are getting reflected back to us through storms, through disease, and as a result, it's our message to receive that and do something about it at this point. I mean, 1/4 of millennials are now caregivers.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that?
So.
That's a very important point.
I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, of course you did. Of course you did. The face of caregiving is changing. The average caregiver used to be a 49-year-old woman who takes care of her mother, and now you have millennials that are becoming the second largest group. I don't know what happened to Generation X.
Not enough of us to go around.
I know. But baby boomers have been on the front lines of family caregivers. I would say that Generation X is really working in the field of healthcare as professional caregivers in different capacities. But millennial caregivers are the next big wave of people trying to contribute to those older generations. And I think that that's amazing. 25% of millennials are caregivers now, as opposed to baby boomer caregivers. 60% of baby boomer caregivers were women and 30% were men. And now you have half and half with millennials being caregivers, men and women. And so I think that companies such as Danswell, I would call Danswell a social enterprise of sorts. You're not just a business, you're here to address social needs. And especially in this political climate, healthcare is changing rapidly and not completely for the best, not completely. We have a lot of legislations happening as far as Medicare and Medicaid is concerned, and the health care of children and the elderly is at stake here. But I think that the mission of your company is completely timely now.
Thank you. That was one of the reasons I put on the event.
Oh, yes.
I saw a need that conventional, or I like to use the term modern day medicine, was not meeting.
Right.
And modern day medicine is fabulous for new piping is needed, or I need a new arm, or I need to be put together again like Humpty Dumpty, or having acute emergency. It is wonderful for that. When it comes to the chronic, it is leaving a lot to be desired. And so what I did with that event was I lured people in, if you will, with free massage, free chemical-free food from Dig In, one of our sponsors, and a celebrity chef demonstration.
Awesome.
And then I had an exhibit hall where we had about 20 sponsors with people sharing things like gluten-free bread that is delicious. I'll tell you straight off, Marie Roth's Simply Trudy, delicious gluten-free bread. And we had things like the Beamer, which is technology that is a non-invasive bypass, actually approved in Europe already under insurance, not yet approved here, although hospitals do have it as a last line of resort. But it really should be the first line of resort. We want non-invasive stuff first.
Right, yeah.
And then we also had things that we had breakout sessions for. So we had talks on how to detox, the gut-brain connection, and vaccine safety.
Very important.
We had talks, and particularly poignant again, if we think about the pig sludge reserves, again, it's all connected. So, when you're intaking that food, you're getting those chemicals in your body, also causing illness, as are we causing it to the environment. And that is happening within the gut. And that's what's destroying, the business that goes on, the good business, the good communication that goes on in the brain, and how our ability to digest and create nutrients from the food that we consume. And that certainly leads to cognitive disorders, right, down the road. So, we also had talks on hemp oil and the benefits of that in the body, for pain relief or whatever it may be. We had yoga, and a technique called Alexander technique that people could come and learn about, which people loved, and all around setting your posture, because we're all at desks all the time when we're really meant to be outdoors. We're animals, and it's really important to spend time outdoors. So, and ground down. So a lot of different things that people could learn about, how to reverse Alzheimer's, for example.
Everybody wants to know that. Everybody.
And just getting that message out that we actually can heal these things